James, how are you?
Roddy, I'm well. How are you doing?
Pretty good. We have a really good episode. This upcoming podcast. I would love for you to introduce it because I think it's one of those mysteries that's always very evident for us whenever we go to our lodges with these brethren that have red aprons.
Yep, we're going to be hearing today from 3 members of the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge. Who brethren will see around in their resplendent in red and white. We're going to learn about who they are, what they do, how one becomes a Provincial Grand Steward, and what happens, I guess, when you stop being a Provincial Grand Steward.
Yeah, and how to get there. And the brethren that we're going to be speaking to are Duncan Lilly, Jack Armistead, and Dan Reed. And they have really cool stories to share with you guys. Just sit back and enjoy it.
Yeah, here we go. Gents, thank you for coming along today. Please tell us who you are and what you do.
Again, my name's Worshipful Brother Duncan Edward Lilly. Currently, I'm the Worshipful Master of the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge of the Masonic Province of Hampshire and Isle of Wight, and also the Assistant Provincial Grand Master for the North East area of the province.
I'm Worshipful Brother Dan Reed. I'm the Secretary of the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge. I have been since 2022. My tenure is due to end in November this year. I'm also a member of the Southampton Lodge, meeting in the South Central area of the province, and I'm grateful to be offered AVC in South Central as of the July AGM.
My name's Jack Armistead. I'm a Provincial Grand Steward in the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge, and I'm currently in my active year travelling around the province on a number of official visits.
Welcome to Crafted in the South. And the big question is, what is the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge?
Well, the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge was formed on the 30th of November 1987 by Right Worshipful Brother James Bobbin, who was the Provincial Grand Master at the time, and he installed the founding master, the Primus Master, Right Worshipful Brother Michael Wilkes, who we all know extremely well. And it was formed in the tradition in our province that the Provincial Grand Master would install the Worshipful Master of the Lodge. And the raison d'etre of the Lodge is to serve the Provincial Grand Master in the province of Hampshire of Isle of Wight, as directed and when required. And obviously that calls, I'll say that again, sorry. And obviously that includes a multitude of different tasks, which no doubt Worshipful Brother Dan will expand on at some stage.
Yeah, effectively we are the Provincial Grand Master's Lodge, whoever that may be of the time, and we are the province's lodge, so we are the workhorse of the province for whatever they call on us to do, whether that be the AGM. We're the silent partners in that alongside the provincial office and the provincial grand director of ceremonies. You'll often see us at the AGM directing, helping, aiding, taking in regalia bags and things like that. There's a number of initiatives that happen around the province to try and promote Freemasonry.
All right.
We often help with that so that we can be visible. There's the Grand Officers Mess, the VO's Mess, which I'm sure we'll expand on during this conversation. But we're effectively here to serve the Provincial Grand Master in the province as and when they need the manpower and the expertise that we provide.
I've heard it described by some people as the engine room of the province. We are the people here just making the province, helping the province work and operate, particularly at the events that it's running across the county, and providing the kind of support to make these events a success.
And you have ceremonial duties as well in that. I mean, Roddy and I will have both seen you at performing ceremonies on behalf of lodges. I was at a meeting last week where, because of a medical condition, I couldn't fulfill my duties as junior deacon at an official visit, and one of the provincial stewards there stepped in and covered that for me. So you're very much there, I think, also to assist lodges in keeping the business of the province going, right?
Yeah, from a Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge perspective, we have a March meeting, which is always a ceremony of raising, and recently we carried out a triple ceremony of raising, I believe, for the first time, and that was a great success down at the Gosport Masonic Centre in May. We have what's called the dinner meeting for the new stewards. So 16 new stewards are appointed and invested each year. And prior to the May meeting, we have a fireside chat, which is a briefing from the Deputy Provincial Grand Master, the Worshipful Master, and the Secretary. And then in July, post the annual general meeting, we always have a meeting where the current provincial Grand Stewards, the active stewards, will deliver one of the Masonic lectures. And then in November, we have our installation meeting, which is quite a lavish affair, really, down at the Novotel Hotel in Southampton. And we get visitors from a large number of provincial Grand Stewards from across both England and Wales. And it's a fabulous meeting.
Just to backtrack a little bit, because we see this group of brethren with red aprons, and it's quite impressive, it's distinctive. How, for enter apprentices here now and non-Masons as well, and well, even seasoned Masons, how do you become a steward?
How do you become a steward? It's a fairly long journey, and the Deputy Provincial Grand Master, alongside a few of others of us, we met some of the new stewards recently, and he puts it very succinctly and very well in that someone somewhere has seen potential. That does not gift you a path all the way up to being the Provincial Grand Master, but someone somewhere has seen that you have the potential to offer something and would like to give you the opportunity. So you'll often find that if someone is particularly excellent at ritual, if they are doing great service to the community, if their charitable endeavours are there, if they're seen encouraging, supporting brethren in their lodge from a mentorship point of view, and so on and so forth, all qualities that we like to think that it will have, someone will spot if someone is particularly great in those. And that would usually be visiting officers, area vice chairman, area chairman will start to have conversations about individuals to say, actually, there is potential with this individual that they could receive a provincial or a provincial Grand Steward early. But it's always oversubscribed. We are gifted and blessed in Hampshire and Isle of Wight that we have many very, very talented people, and there are only 16 provincial Grand Stewards every year. So it's always a difficult job, I guess, for the cabinet, but or the executive, I should say. But I'll defer to Duncan on that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a comprehensive list of potential candidates that have already shown both potential and have obviously got the opportunity to continue their journey in Freemasonry, through the provincial level. And it's quite a rigorous criteria, really. For example, we would expect a provincial Grand Steward to also be a member of the Royal Arch. We would expect a provincial Grand Steward to be a charity steward, for the obvious reasons, because when we're out and about on official visits, the VIP, as part of his address, will talk about the One Journey, One Organisation approach to harmonisation of the craft and chapter, and of course a commitment to the Masonic Charitable Foundation. So it's imperative that we select the right individuals, because at the end of the day, they are representing the Right Worshipful Provincial Grand Master when we're out and about on official visits, be it with himself or with the other VIPs.
So it sounds like somewhat of a Masonic ambassadorship, which I find fantastic. And also, you are the backbone of Freemasonry in Hampshire. I was reading your website yesterday, and we only see you at these grand events, right? But today I want to go behind the scenes, right? James and I were talking about this. But before we go, how long are you a steward? And are you part of that lodge forever afterwards in your Masonic journey?
So what happens, for example, is on the 2nd of July this year, the 16 successful stewards will be appointed and invested by the Provincial Grand Master at the annual general meeting in the Grand Temple up at Great Queen Street.
Mm-hmm.
So at that stage, they are the Provincial Grand Master's active stewards. In November of this year, they will be invited to become a joining member of the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge. So it's two separate entities, really.
Okay. Oh, wow.
So you can't be proposed into the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge like any other lodge. Obviously, you've had to have gone through the chair, and had a positive journey in Freemasonry up to that point, and obviously have performed well as the immediate past master. And if they've been selected as someone who's got potential and opportunity, then Form C is completed, and then obviously there's a discussion about selection of the 16. However, we have a saying in the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge, once a steward, always a steward. So, for example, if Dan sends out a call to arms because we need a number of Provincial Grand Stewards to support the event, if need be, I will obviously volunteer from available to carry out whatever duties is being requested. That could be car parking, it could be marshalling within meeting, it could be supporting non-Masonic events, it could be supporting events, as part of the community engagement program and so forth.
Okay.
So there's a wide variety of tasks. It's not always, a glamorous role as such, but it is a commitment to the Right Worshipful Provincial Grand Master and the province.
Mm-hmm.
And on most occasions, we don't struggle to get volunteers. We get positive results.
I think for many people, it is a privilege to be able to go out, and especially what you mentioned earlier, the word ambassadorship it's a very interesting take on it, because I think effectively as Masons, the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge, we are ambassadors not only at official visits, but when we're visiting other lodges throughout the province in our own private capacity, we're there wearing the badge of the Provincial Grand Stewards or members of that lodge, members of who've received this appointment, and really we conduct ourselves accordingly. We need to make sure we are representing the best in province. And the kind of attributes we're projecting that evening are the attributes which are going to inspire the next generation of Masons to think, I'd like to do that. I want to try to do my best in Freemasonry, try to put something back into the lodge, into the community, so I can put myself in that position. And as Duncan was referring to, the role is not the most glamorous one at time to time, but it's always an interesting one, an engaging one, particularly when even if you're doing car parking duties, you're selling merchandise, you're doing a variety of things on the evening, but everything you're doing is supporting the province, and it makes everything so much rewarding as a result.
I think you've touched on a really key point there of it's not necessarily the most glamorous work, but it needs to be done. There's all sorts of perceptions throughout Masonry, even between Masons, and sometimes it can be seen that the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge might be elitist, for example, and it just isn't. Some of the duties standing out in the pouring rain, we forged some brilliant friendships doing so in the pouring rain. The job needs doing. Things need doing. We will support other lodges, as you've just referred to, if a deacon need someone to step in, or if we can do a ceremony for another lodge. And I think that's the thing to impress. We're here to serve and get our hands dirty, and there's nothing elitist about this. I think the difficulty is you can only have 16 stewards each year, and currently 16 stewards. So the barrier to entry, if you like, can sometimes be perceived as creating a clandestine lodge of elitism. We're not. We will get our hands dirty and help anyone, and some of the most approachable people, I think, in the province.
I'm curious, as the master of the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge and assistant Provincial Grand Master, do those two roles, do they typically come together? Does one come with the other, or is it just how it's worked this year? And do you find that there's a particular synergy? Can you bring something to each of those roles that you might not otherwise have been able to bring because you happen to be in the two offices at once?
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely bring something to both roles, and it is, I would say, quite unusual for an assistant Provincial Grand Master to also be the Worshipful Master of the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge. But, that's how it fell for me, and you only get offered either appointment on one occasion. And for me, having been a Provincial Grand Steward since 2011, it's always something that I've aspired to achieve, and that's becoming, the Worshipful Master of the Lodge, and it's a fantastic opportunity. Of course, it adds a certain amount of pressure onto, my main role as Assistant Provincial Grand Master, because as the Worshipful Master of the Stewards Lodge, we obviously get invites from other Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge. For example, this year, Gloucestershire, Warwickshire, Hertfordshire, Middlesex, wherever it may be. And having accepted the role, you have to commit to visit, because one of the great things I find about being a Provincial Grand Steward for the rest of my journey through Freemasonry is that when you go out and about visiting other Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge, you make friends within all the other provinces, and then obviously as you see them on the sort of national Masonic circuit, you identify with those new friends, so it's a great way to make new connections outside of the province. And like everything that we do in Freemasonry, different Provincial Grand Stewards Lodges have different customs. And so again, it's another nice way, to go out and visit and to have a look how they do it. And that would, generally speaking, be slightly different to us. For us, we're quite lucky that Hampshire and the ROI is really a military-based canton.
Yes,
it has been for hundreds of years.
Mm-hmm.
So we do tend to have the edge on the, what I would call the ceremonial, the floor work, the ritual, whatever. And don't get me wrong, there's some really, really good other steward lodges out there, but we are very focused on the military approach to everything, and that that started way back in 1987, and it's continued, and hence why we have a full house for every installation meeting in November, because other Provincial Grand Stewards Lodges like to come along and observe how we do it, and vice versa. When we go out, for example, Jack was up at Hertfordshire Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge on Monday night,
which was again a fantastic occasion. There were about 135 Masons there, all in one relatively small room there. We were grateful for air conditioning that night, I can tell you that. But it was a wonderful experience seeing so many people from many different provinces. And up there in Hertfordshire, where the location is, they're right on the border of Essex, for example, the county, border of many other lodges, Middlesex included. And there's a huge amount of cross-visiting going on, which is wonderful to see at that sort of level. And you meet all sorts of people. I ran into the secretary of the Middlesex Lodge up there. And he was saying, yes, we've got to go and have an invitation sent out to the Hampshire Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge for a reciprocal visit. I sort of thought, fantastic, let's see that happening. Because it's one thing I'm very keen on, is making the most of my year as active steward and having the opportunity to cross-visit across many other provinces and seeing the kind of differences they do in ritual. Meeting new people is just a fantastic experience.
You're representing Grand Lodge, you're representing Provincial, you're representing your lodge, and you're representing Freemasonry. That's a big deal, and I know there comes a lot of responsibility. But what does your schedule look like for this year? Because just hearing you guys talking about all these events and things you got to do, what does the year look like?
It can be quite a challenging schedule from time to time. I have some other commitments up in London, so for me it's been juggling those alongside my work and other social commitments. But in terms of what the commitments can offer, it depends really how much time and energy and money you have available to commit to it. Okay. I'm quite keen on making the most of my year, but in terms of the commitments, I can just refer to what's called official visits, for example, where we're going out accompanying the Assistant Provincial Grand Master and other VIPs across Hampshire. Those number of visits I've had done about 15 of those during my year.
Wow.
There is a minimum level of about, I think, 6 or 8.
Okay.
Maybe Dan can confirm. That's the sort of level we have as a minimum. But really, as a steward, it's very much how much do you want to get involved. I think some stewards get much more involved than others. But one thing I really want to put across is that it does very much depend on the individual, because we appreciate that people are made stewards.
Yes.
Other sort of people are also tend to give their all in other areas of life and work, and these people often can be people who've taken on other commitments socially, family and work-wise, and so they have to balance those against Freemasonry. So having a minimum level of commitment means that when you're taking on the role, this is what's expected of you, and you can consider, is this the sort of role I want to take on? Can I commit to this role properly? But anything above that, it's up to your time and effort and commitment.
I think to your past 2 previous questions, everything's heightened, I guess. guess, or bigger with the Stewards Lodge. We are nearly 290 in terms of membership. So from a secretarial point of view, you think how much your lodge secretary might get asked for clearance certificates or apologies, I can't make it to the lodge, and so on and so forth. That's tenfold. For our particular lodge. So everything is enhanced, but we do recognise, to Jack's point, that everyone is different. Everyone has different calls on their time, different financial abilities, and so on and so forth. And I think for me personally, it's just engaging, even if you can't make something or whatever, responsiveness, giving apologies and showing willingness, even 1 or 2 times a year, it speaks volumes than no response or anything like that. So we've got a really, really, really good bunch. As Jack and Duncan have both alluded to, when the Provincial Grand Master and other various executives, area executives across the province are looking for people to do things, they will look for that potential and that opportunity. But in things like the Stewards Lodge, there's a good playground to do litmus testing for things. So, if someone's arranged an event, if someone's going on a lot of visits, so unfortunately or fortunately, I think it naturally comes to pass that sometimes APGMs do come from Provincial Grand Stewards because they have been able to dedicate the time and show that they can do particular roles. And I think when the Provincial Grand Master is looking for those sort of people to help assist him in running the province, he needs people that he can evidence can do the role.
Stewards are known quantities in that respect, I suppose, aren't they?
But there are known quantities outside of the Stewards Lodge as well. It's a picking ground for him, I assume, amongst other areas as well. But yeah, evidence based on experience will help make that decision, I would expect.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's not necessarily about how much commitment you can give to the province and the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge. It's when you're doing it, how well do you do it? Okay. Because you've got to look at every individual, in particular the active stewards of the year. Are they retired? Are they semi-retired? Are they self-employed? Are they employed? And when you look at those 4 categories of individuals, then quite clearly time availability is going to vary. So, if you've got someone who's in full-time work but commits whenever he's available and does it really well, he's assessed, at the same level as everyone else.
Correct.
Yes. If you're retired and you've got the time and you've got the commitment, then of course you can do a lot more to a certain extent. It's not necessarily always the case. But, it's a sort of thing that we do have to look at when we're looking at appointments within the lodge, because unlike any other lodge, progression in the lodge doesn't start until you've been appointed as a junior warden. So each and every year, the deacons, the inner guard, the ADC, the assistant secretary and so forth will change. We'll be looking at stewards from the previous year or before that. But once you're appointed as junior warden, you know then that you're going to go senior warden, master of the lodge. So again, there's a lot of applicants for the progressive appointments.
I see. I know you guys attend to big events, but I find it interesting that you also assist lodges. And how do you assist lodges?
Yeah, so in various ways, you will often find, and we said this to the Provincial Grand Steward designates that we met earlier on this week. The apron stands out. So, when you go into a normal lodge meeting, there will be less of the red/crimson than any other colour in there. And you'll often find that a DC or a secretary or even other members of the Stewards Lodge that are spread across those lodges will often spot that and say, oh, someone hasn't turned up who is going to do the working tools, and it's a drop of the hat kind of thing, or deacons. And if we're able to and willing to, we will absolutely do that. So there's that element which you've already touched on earlier that we will help and support. But we also offer to do ceremonies for other lodges. We noticed or we envisaged, I guess, when COVID hit, that we would hit maybe a bit of a storm in the project, perfect storm in the province, where people were waiting to go to the next step of their Masonic journey. But equally, that gave, thankfully, a lot of people out in the public an opportunity to see what Freemasonry was about and want to join as well. And how do you balance those two conflicting priorities of making new Freemasons, but also taking care of and progressing the ones that had to go on pause, if you like, because of the COVID pandemic. And the Stewards Lodge offered our services there to say, actually, you can do more ceremonies, but rather than put the strain on your officers, let us come and do a passing or a raising on your behalf. And we also conduct lectures, very engaging, fun, informative lectures, which we've performed. I think we're getting close to 700 lectures since we were formed in 1987. And we've got about 11, 12 different lectures that we can do. And it's something different for a meeting if a lodge doesn't have a candidate. Demonstrations are good to see, but if a lodge isn't in the position to have an initiation or a passing or a raising, demos sometimes, can wear thin. And a lecture is something different. So we're trying to help in all different aspects of, if you've got too many candidates or too many ceremonies, we can help. If you haven't got any candidates and you want to do something different for an evening, we can help with a lecture. And if we turn up on the night and you need a slot filled, maybe we can help. And I might have some of my colleagues in the Stewards Lodge now cursing as they're out and about over the next few weeks. They might get cornered to do something.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, how does one petition to have you guys do a lecture? Help us out with
I have to say, it's an interesting test of memory when it comes to doing that sort of work. You come into a lodge, you're there on a regular visit, you think, oh, just have a nice chat with them. I've seen there's a few familiar faces from other lodges, and the DC comes up looking just a bit of white as a sheet, saying, we're missing an inner guard this evening. Do you think you could? And you think, yeah, it sounds like an interesting challenge. Let's see how much of that I can remember from the last time I did that role. But why not? But you get yourself stuck in on that. Yeah. You're not afraid to do it because people know you're there to support the lodge. Even if it's not perhaps word perfect, you're doing the best you can, and that's appreciated. And for us, it's, again, we want to do the best we can, and it's an enjoyable and interesting challenge when we can just do our all and try to fill in that office as best we can on the night.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, the lodges can benefit from an engagement perspective. If you've got a lodge that's recruiting well, and they've got an excess number of candidates. And obviously nowadays, it's quite easy to apply for and have a dispensation approved by the Provincial Grand Secretary. And therefore you can hold an extra meeting, and, if you require our support, then we will quite happily come along and obviously help you out on the ceremonial side. Obviously, the lodge is responsible for the opening and closing and the agenda item points, but then we normally take over and assist or deal with the whole ceremony on your behalf. Because to me, if you've got younger members within Freemasonry that want to progress, at a sort of steady pace, then there's an opportunity to be able to offer that opportunity by using the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge. And Dan, on a fairly regular basis, will send out communications to the secretaries of other lodges, remind them that we're here behind the scenes to assist. And we've done it on a number of occasions over the last couple of years, and since we've come out of COVID, and it sometimes prevents a newer member from moving away or not necessarily attending meetings on a regular basis because he feels he's just sat on the bench and not making any progress. Because, quite rightly so, he's been initiated into a successful lodge. So those lodges, can obviously take advantage from our support, shall I say, and the lodges that are struggling, again, we can go along and bolster the team and help them out in any way that that we can.
There's the byproduct from that as well of not only are we helping out, that's more people at your meeting.
Yes.
That's more people at the festive board. That's more money in the raffle and so on and so forth. It just adds to the overall evening, much like the various visiting groups that you've found the areas do.
Yes.
I'm not going to say we're a pseudo visiting group, but that is a byproduct of us coming along and helping.
And it's a fantastic experience when you come along on, say, an official visit to a lodge, which may have quite low numbers, sometimes 10 or 12 members there, and seeing the festive ball, the temple so filled up there, it makes you think that the members of the lodge really appreciate there actually being people here to witness a ceremony they've got to perform. They feel like there's not just they're doing it for a small group of them, they're doing it for something more. They have a nice audience there to appreciate the work they've done. And I think, I'd hope they feel that is really rewarding there. And it makes the evening even more enjoyable at festive board as well. We have so many people there who can really contribute to the atmosphere.
I'm curious to know more about your role in meetings that don't happen very often. So, for example, if a new lodge is consecrated, or perhaps in the unfortunate circumstance that a lodge needs to hand its warrant back in because it's no longer sustainable, what role can the stewards play in those meetings? And are they statutory roles, or are they? I assume in both cases, they're very well attended meetings.
Well, it's really a provincial responsibility. So if a lodge is, made a decision to hand back their warrant, then, we as a province has to acknowledge that decision. And the decisions can be for, a number of reasons. And so that particular type of ceremony will be organised via the provincial office, obviously the provincial Grand Secretary, the provincial Grand Director, ceremonies, and so forth. There'll be a number of designated stewards involved. In for example, the closing of a lodge, and much similar with the second scenario. Because they're provincial responsibilities, but there will be a certain level of involvement by members of the provincial Grand Stewards Lodge.
Yeah, happily in the case of handing back a warrant, not something you have to do very often.
Yeah, the consecration of the lodge is again, provincial level with obviously the founders, and the initial joining members of the new lodge that's been consecrated. Yes, there will be an official party, and a number of provincial Grand Stewards lodges will be part of that official team. But it's more provincial level.
But we because of the diverse and large membership we have areas of expertise in carrying out big meetings anyway. So we helped at the Brian Bellinger consecration. Again, car parking duties and things like that, not anything particularly sexy, some might think, but it needs to be done. You've got such a large amount of people coming along that organisation, advice, help is needed. We've been approached and helped Football Lodge, who carried out an installation last year at the Novotel Hotel, which is where we hold our installation meeting. So that's within our wheelhouse of how do you set up a lodge meeting in that hotel. How do you flip the room to a dining room as quickly as possible so that everyone can enjoy the festive board? The grandest night out that's coming up soon.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. What goes into that? How do you do it? What are the intricacies of that event?
I'd love to take some of the credit for that, but Luke and the others that are dealing with that are doing a sterling job. But again, it's just a sounding board of, when you do an event, there's all the paraphernalia and all of the furniture, and how do you get pedestals somewhere where pedestals don't usually reside? Right?
Correct. Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So again, not much heavy lifting for that, but it's a service to be able to be a sounding board or to plug the very small holes if there are any in such event. So yeah, again, to support, not always to lead, I think is what we do.
Tell me about the camaraderie between you guys when you're at these events. Like, I want to hear about that, because we're talking about the formal, which is important, but when you guys are at those events, like be setting up or anything, how is it like?
It's another group, right? When you join Freemasonry, people say, you're meeting a new group of friends and you're part of an area and you're part of a province and so on and so forth. But then you have all of these sidebars of if you're in the Stewards Lodge, that's another collective. We just advised the new stewards that are coming in to set up a WhatsApp group. In the WhatsApp group from my steward year 2019, every now and then people will be wishing each other happy birthday. If we're setting up the night before our installation meeting, often few of us will go for a curry afterwards because it dictates that we need to do it over sort of dinner time, so to make sure that we go and eat. And again, you never forget who was stood in the rain with you.
Yeah.
When you were doing car parking duties, and you find the same faces around. I'm really fortunate that from my cohort, one is a deputy Grand Director of Ceremonies in the province, currently our Director of Ceremonies. We've got some visiting officers. One's an AVC. I'm about to become an AVC. So you find that you form this bond from being that tier of stewards and from helping out and from enjoying the social aspect, but enjoying the dedication to the work and support. And then as you go through your Masonic journeys together, you're really happy for someone from a different area that you didn't know before who's received a provincial promotion, etc. So you really form another clique side of your lodge.
Yes,
it's great.
I mean, it sounds really cool because you get rewarded for good service, and then you get identified for potential. But then you have this baptism by fire. It's just like, haha, joke's on you. You're a Provincial Grand Steward now, but you will be in the rain outside working this event. And I think that's fascinating. That's character building because it's also it's more brethren that you're getting close to that they're not from your lodge. And there's always, like you said, you build these relationship and experiences through going through something 100% that then serves you as being a ruler of the province, of just having that relationship because you already know how each other works. I think there is a positive thing when it comes to that.
Yes, I mean, I'll just comment on that by saying I'd echo Dan's thoughts in that when it comes to people who go through these sort of responsibilities, yes, it can be a bit of a baptism of fire. I think the people who are brought forward and become provincial stewards are those who've already proven themselves to have that potential, that ability, that dedication really to do the best they can by their own lodge. And so when it comes to province, those sort of skills and attributes flowing quite naturally. Although again, no one really wants to have to stand outside in the rain escorting, putting cars in the car park. People do it anyway because this is part of the job you do. You take this role on, and you
serve where you need to serve.
Exactly right. It is a thing where we are serving to make the province, to improve the province. We are the engine room for the province to make sure these events go off without a hitch wherever possible. And when it comes to how that translates over to the stewards in your year, it does create that bond of fellowship, as Dan was saying, which is just something really special. Again, when you're in a lodge of your own, when you have your brothers within the lodge, that is something there. But when you're within a select group of brothers who you meet from time to time, helping each other out at all these different events, you're the one who may occasionally need to perhaps nip across to a supermarket to get small raffle prizes because someone's short of raffle prizes.
Dashing that one.
This sort of thing builds that kind of that bond between us.
Absolutely.
And it's a fantastic thing to have, even just within our own year, because as Dan says, there's the happy birthday messages, there's the messages where someone says, oh, I'm really sorry, I have an emergent family commitment, I can't make this sort of official visit, and someone says, no problem at all, I can cover you for that. There's this element, that kind of bond of friendship and fellowship, which just develops very naturally for it, and we feel very grateful to have.
Yeah, it's about enjoying ourselves. It's fun. There's plenty of good banter. And it gives you a good grounding and understanding about how much time, effort, and commitment behind the scenes that's put in by, for example, the Provincial Grand Secretary, Provincial Grand Directors of Ceremonies, and his team. Jack's father on the admin side for the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge, and all of the volunteers, because to bring together, for example, the annual general meeting in the Great Temple and the after proceedings, it's a hell of a task. If you just look at, for example, the dining plan, and this year we're talking 720 to 750 sat down.
Wow.
And everyone wants to be sat in the right seat.
Yes.
With the brethren from their lodge, so they can celebrate the appointment and promotion. So it does give you a really good background brief into what goes on at provincial level. And as you progress through your journey in Freemasonry, you've gained that experience, and you've got that knowledge, and you've got that understanding that at times, tasks do take a period of time to come to fruition. but you understand the reasons why. I mean, for example, recently, appointments and promotions with the craft and the large, I believe the provincial office sent out around about 850 letters, and they got them out on time.
Wow.
I mean, that's a significant task with staff, but everyone's expecting that letter through the post box on that given day, and that's just many tasks behind the scenes that go on. We've got, for example, this Saturday, we've got the annual general meeting of Mark Master Masons, and then later on we've got the provincial grand convocation, and then obviously we've got the annual general meeting on the 2nd July, and on the 23rd of April we've got the Right Worshipful Provincial Grand Master being invested as our most excellent Grand Superintendent. And again, behind the scenes, there's a lot of involvement with Supreme Grand Chapter for that day.
Okay.
And if it wasn't really for the volunteers from the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge and others, those events would never come to fruition.
The remarks you made just a moment ago about Masonic journeys chimes nicely with the question I've got for you. And that's one of the best pieces of advice I've had since joining Freemasonry, was that you should never do anything in Freemasonry, quite rightly, with any expectation of getting something in return. It's not a transactional organisation, nor should it ever be. But if someone looks at the work of the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge and thinks that it's something they'd like to do, if they aspire to join your ranks and serve in that way, if you had to pull out a few key skills that every steward has that sort of is the foundation of what you do, what would those things be? What should Brother Masons start to think about and try and just be good at? What are the things that make a good steward that you can do before you're anywhere near being considered to be one of the 16?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to the new stewards on Tuesday night at our fireside chat, and to me, the key factor is teamwork. As Dan said, we're around about 290 members. It's a huge team. And if everyone's moving, in the right direction, all operating from the same sheet of music, then you've got an effective team. And without an effective team, some of these events couldn't function properly. It's also, about commitment and determination and wanting to deliver to the highest standards possible. But teamwork is the big emphasis. For me, anyway, personally speaking.
Yeah, I think I'd add willingness, obviously deference to the various members of the executive, and the importance of their role and how you can help. It's everything every Mason probably has, or I would say does have in Hampshire and Isle of Wight certainly is. And it's everything that makes a good Freemason, but willingness, dedication, and being part of a team, because the Stewards Lodge only works because of many individual cogs coming together, and that's the thing. You have to be one of many cogs. Not get above your station, really.
Fair enough. I think from mine there, what Dan's touched on is very good points here. I would also say and add to that there's nothing that makes a provincial grand steward which is not something which any person who comes into Mason may not already have innately. A lot of skills they may have in their own professional career can lend themselves well to Freemasonry. Teamwork, as Duncan was touched on. And it's the sort of really the ability to get stuck in and give something to Freemasonry, which is so important there. Anyone in the lodge could potentially be in that position, provided you are someone who demonstrates that teamwork, demonstrates this communication, demonstrates the ability to put something into Freemasonry, not with the expectation of getting something back, but the understanding that by putting something into Freemasonry, you could get something out of it in terms of your enjoyment of it, your ability to make new friends, your willingness to put yourself towards an organisation that's creating such benefits for people in the province, Masons and non-Masons. It's that sense of innate benefit you get that makes you think, yes, I've done a good job at the end of the day. I feel so much more worthwhile for doing it. That is the sort of skill, I think, which is, again, adds to that from what Dan and Duncan have said.
And this team and your Hampshire and Isle of Wight Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge, because we are your lodge, the province's lodge, etc., is it works and it's noticed. Recently, we went and performed a lecture in Sussex for the Sussex Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge, and that was the celebration of their 250th anniversary of their first Provincial Grand Master. So that's another province that is hitting a very, very significant milestone, and they decided that the way they'd like to celebrate in that meeting was to invite us along to perform. That's the best advertisement I can give, I guess, of your Hampshire and Isle of Wight Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge, and how we're acknowledged outside the province as well, and how we will go and support the province outside of our borders.
Do you find that there are challenges sort of at the other side of the activity? You talked earlier, Dan, about the challenges of narrowing down a large cohort of potential new stewards into just 16. Do you find, I was at a discussion about the membership challenge a couple of years ago, and one of the things that I remember from that discussion was that two sort of pain points for losing people from Freemasonry are 1 or 2 years after they've been initiated, because they don't move through quickly enough, or perhaps they're in a lodge that isn't a good match for them and they fall away. And then 1 or 2 years after they've been through the chair, because they've been the master of their lodge, they're the centre of everything, they're kind of there as IPM, and then a lot of lodges make them go out the front as Tyler, and they just kind of fall away. Do you find that there are challenges for stewards who finish their active year, who have these opportunities to contribute for so much, that then that falls away and they struggle to continue that? Or is it sort of once you do that, you just naturally carry on?
Yeah, I think the most important point is to continue the engagement with them, once they've completed their active year. You've got to keep them involved. And I don't just mean, the sort of back office type duties that we're often called upon to do. So, for example, at our recent March ceremony, where we raised 3 candidates from 3 different lodges, we used as many members of the Stewards Lodge to be actively involved in the ceremony, and it was a spectacular ceremony. We're not just saying that because I'm the Worship Master, because to be quite honest, I didn't have a great deal of ritual to deliver, but it worked really well. And I know speaking to the stewards who were involved was saying, great, that's just what we want to be doing. So, it's about engagement. It's also about encouraging them to continue their journey as a provincial Grand Steward. There's nothing to stop them, for example, coming out on visits to other provincial Grand Stewards Lodge beyond the active year. On most occasions, yes, you've got to pay for your after proceedings meal, and that's fine. But, if they are keen to continue with the journey within the Stewards Lodge, then there's quite a lot on offer. And sometimes you've got to be a bit proactive yourself, rather than waiting, for example, to the secretary to say, I'm looking for X amount of volunteers, wherever it may be, because everyone's got the calendar of events. So as Dan says, it's about reactive communication with the current team. But of course, you will get some that, fall by the wayside after a period of time, but that's inevitable in all walks of life, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
The membership challenge applies to our lodge as much as it does to anyone else's lodge. We've got, as I say, 280, 290 members. We have 16 lodge stewards every year, which are the 16 incoming provincial Grand Stewards, if they so choose to join our lodge. So once you take the stewards out of contention, you, like any other lodge, you've got 10, 15 officers, positions that you can fill from a cohort of 260, 280 members. So how do you square that circle? And we're constantly asking that question. We're constantly thinking of ways to do that, because it's not an easy one to answer. But the lecture teams, they're helping out with the provincial events, they're still going on visits, and helping out the province in any other ways that they need is how we try and do that. We can always be better. Every lodge can always be better, and we should always strive for continuous improvement. But it's certainly the same challenge as some other lodges, but I think we've got a unique challenge as well, given the sheer volume of membership and keeping them in touch. Yeah, not really a silver bullet answer there, but happy to hear your thoughts. If you've got any ideas, I'll take them off.
Well, I think it's, I suppose, having the three of you here together, sort of, for me, highlights the advantages that the skills you get being a provincial Grand Steward offer you to help you continue your own Masonic journey. You're all at very different stages of your journeys as provincial Grand Stewards and Masons, and I think that shows that the things that you learn within that lodge are things that can help you contribute positively at all levels of Freemasonry, whether you're a very, very senior member or if you're just at perhaps the earlier part of your journey with the lodge. It works well. It's sort of good for all seasons, isn't it? It's very transferable to all parts of the craft.
Yeah, I mean, to me, we're very fortunate in two ways, really. First and foremost, and it's all based on membership numbers. So at the moment, because we're slightly below 8,000 as far as the provincial membership is concerned, we get 16 appointments per year. And unlike any other lodge, we're guaranteed that every year at the moment, based on those numbers. If it goes above 8,000, then those numbers increase. No other lodge across the province can say each and every year we get 16 joining members, and secondly, I think the joining members that come in each and every year, they all bring an array of skills with them.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got this vast array of talent within the lodge, and we can call upon members for all sorts of requirements. For example, we've got a storage unit around the back of the provincial grand office at the moment, and we're looking for members from the Stewards Lodge who have the skills to make sure that they can line that unit,
Yes.
to prevent watering down and whatever else seeping into it.
Yeah. Speaking of skills, since you guys have an appointment for that year, I'm going to put you on the spot. What is one skill or cover skills that you've picked up during your year or your tenure as stewards?
It's an interesting question, that one. I suppose not so much a skill, but a renewed appreciation of the hard work and the time and dedication involved here as well, actually. And it's something I'll just go back on and touch on the question that was asked in terms of the skills you get from being a Provincial Grand Steward and how those can transfer back into the rest of your Masonic journey. And that kind of appreciation of the work that goes on behind the scenes there, I think is so important for anyone who's involved in more of a role within the lodge where you're helping to manage and direct it. For example, I was attending a workshop last weekend for a DC/ADC role, and those sort of workshops go into quite some detail about the sort of work and the kind of structure and how you can make the evening run as a success. And one thing that struck me when I was attending that workshop was quite how many skills you develop as a Provincial Grand Steward transfer across to that, and you realise this is where the organisation skills come in, this is where the teamwork ability comes in, because you're one cog in a greater machine, whether it's with Province or whether it's with the lodge you deal with there. So there's that sort of transferability is really important in terms of the actual skills which have been developed there. Yes, definitely skills about building up and taking down a lodge. I found so that's an interesting skill set to have. A very niche skill set, but a particularly useful one for the Grand Stewards Lodge. Again, Novotel has a number of items of furniture which is stored there for Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge, used for the lodge itself and used for where we go across and visit other lodges to support them with their ceremonies. And there's always a lot of hard work and time and organisation involved in saying we need to be at the lodge at the Novotel at this time to take items out, to move it across, to build a lodge up, to deconstruct, to take back. There doesn't always have to be one person doing it, but it's just having the team there to help facilitate that. Mm-hmm. And again, the skill set of making sure everything's there at the end of the evening as well when we come back. We don't want to leave anything behind.
Absolutely.
I think for me, it's two things really. It's time management and being thick-skinned. Time management until recently. Last year, I was secretary in 3 lodges. One a membership of around 20 or 30, one a membership of 40 to 50, and then one a membership of 280, 290, with a full-time job and a young family. To balance as well. I think getting your templates and being able to hit things in the most expeditious way, the time management was certainly something that I built even more on in my current role. And like any other lodge, you will have, your secretary might have the past secretary or maybe a couple of past secretaries. I have 30, 40, 50 past secretaries or lodge secretaries. There's 20, 30, 40 past directors of ceremonies of our lodge or lodge director of ceremonies and things like that. I made mistakes. I don't like making mistakes. I make mistakes. if I've given someone a wrong rank or whatever,
Doesn't really make mistakes. Don't be humble. He's very good.
but it's perfectly valid and it's perfectly welcomed because those two things, time management and being able to be receptive to positive input from others who have done the job is really key. And I think as soon as you think that you're bulletproof or beyond reproach, then the people pointing out where you might have made a typo in minutes, it can grind on you. But no, I think I've really welcomed both of those things, time management and getting people to feedback.
Yeah, I think you are working in a sort of high performance team environment. So from an individual perspective, you're very conscious of the fact that you need to be performing to the levels of expectation. So everyone's working hard to make sure that whatever we do it to the best of our ability. Not just the ceremonies, but any other tasks that way. Because Province.
I think it's very important you said that about being high performance, because I think that sometimes we could feel bad because we made a mistake. But that's the whole point of what Freemasonry is, to become comfortable with mistakes in order to become better. Because how many more times were you successful than you weren't? And I really like that you said that, because sometimes we do forget that we are high performers. We just forget about it and we hone in on the mistake. And that's a big lesson that you just taught me right now, because I make mistakes and I dwell on them so much. Today, 7 o'clock in the morning, thanks to James. Hey, mate, you forgot the opening on Gifton's podcast episode. I was like, no way. I was until 10 o'clock, 11 at night, and I forgot to put it. And I was just there hearing it and hearing it. But it's the first mistake we've done that I've done that in the last 6 episodes that we've had. But you dwell on it, but because you care so much.
Here's what's great about Freemasonry for me, alongside the camaraderie, meeting people you me. It's inherent in our ritual, what you've just said. We are all rough ashlars trying to be smooth ashlars, right? That's what we are, right? So, we try again. And we will make mistakes, and it's learning from them and becoming better. And that's one of the key things of Freemasonry. So, it should be welcomed.
Absolutely. James,
do you have anything else that you particularly want to tease out while we're here? Is it worth asking you if a lodge would like you to come and support one of their ceremonies or perform, how they can do that? Is there any questions you want to be asked before we... I mean, we've got a ton of content here, so there's really is just left with anything that you want to tease out that we haven't.
No, I think if anyone's interested in, we try to advertise and get our posters up in as many Masonic halls as we can. The secretary's details, my details are very well publicised on provincial yearbooks and so on and so forth. We have a lecture chairman, but I will often take the inquiries because the generic email address is out there.
So lodges know well how to graduate.
But it's there's no harm in reiterating the fact that we can be contacted. We have a plethora of lectures, first degree, second degree, third degree. So, if you've got a load of entered apprentices, you don't particularly want to kick them out for the lecture. We do a lot of first degree stuff. I guess from there, what I wanted to get out of this is some people might not know who the Provincial Grand Stewards are. Some people might have one Provincial Grand Steward in their lodge and that's it. That's their knowledge of what we're all about. And to really dispel some of the myths that we just sit there as some lodge that thinks we're above our station. We're just, our whole point is to serve the province, serve other lodges. So it's quite disheartening when you hear other lodges, potentially thinking we aren't approachable.
And that's what we're doing this for, right? To dispel the myth.
Yeah.
And you're not off the hook. And speaking about and continuing dispelling myths, you know what I'm talking about right now. You know what question is going to come up. Why the red aprons?
Got to the stewards, red aprons and colours and jewels concern goes back to 1731. where a decision was made that stewards, talking Grand Stewards and eventually Provincial Grand Stewards, were given the right, or he was approved for the crimson aprons and collars to be worn. There's all sorts of rumours before that about, grand festivals, and the Grandmaster and other rulers potentially were finding it difficult to work out who was supposed to be serving wine. So wine was a number of aprons, and hence the crimson apron came to fruition. But how true is that? I'm not quite sure, but I know certainly 1731 was the first recorded in minutes up at Grand Lodge that relates to the wearing of the crimson apron, the stewards.
That's right, and I like to pick out of wine being spilt on the apron, and that's one of the stories of why you guys wear crimson aprons. But I found this on your guys' website, and there's the motto that you guys have, and it says, just a little excerpt: "Long may the Grand Stewards continue to enjoy their traditional privileges and custom, and the proud motto specially composed for them by King Solomon himself, aspectu meo quam mappa rubro quia fortiter labore," which, being interpreted, is, "If my face is as red as my apron, it is because I'm working so hard." I think that's absolutely brilliant. After you guys have told us what you guys do for this province, standing out in the rain, consecrating lodges, standing in for ritual, I think it's absolutely fantastic. And we thank you so much for taking time out of your day and dispelling the myths and telling us more about the brethren that help run this wonderful province.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for coming. Roddy, what a fantastic interview that was.
It was a really good one. Dispelled the myth of the brethren with red aprons. I really loved to hear what they do for lodges and also for Provincial. And you know what? Just go up to those guys, and if you're curious of what they're doing in that event, go up. Bunch of friendly guys, and highly recommend you taking a look at their website. We'll include it in this episode, so you just get even more familiar with their work around the province.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear how, once you're part of the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge, you're always a member of the Provincial Grand Stewards Lodge. I mean, Duncan Lilly is an assistant provincial Grand Master in the province, and yet he is still the worshipful master of the Stewards Lodge, and is actively involved with their work, which I guess shows that once you've moved on from being a steward as he has, you are always, even though you may move on to other things, you always retain that connection to those brethren, which is a nice thing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a different type of camaraderie, right? One that's outside your craft lodge. And like I said, I hope you guys go to the website and go up to those guys and just say hello. That's why I love this episode, because you're dispelling this mystique that those brethren have. And yeah, thank you very much to the guys that came to talk about the Grand Stewards Lodge.
Definitely. And as we bring this episode to a close, Roddy, I find myself sad because, as you know, the summer break is upon us, and it feels like particularly in Wolsey Lodge, where we don't meet in December because we meet on the third Thursday.
I wish we had an extra one.
We start in September, and then just as you start to get into the swing of it in the routine of Freemasonry, there's a 2-month break through Christmas, and then now, just as we start to get into it as the spring arrives, it stops again for a few months. So I'm sad that Freemasonry is coming to a halt a little bit for us, but that's what visiting is for, of course, and there are lodges that meet year round. So brethren, if you need to scratch that itch, go out and find a lodge that meets year round, or join one of the many side orders on offer. But if you can't do that, of course, Roddy, this podcast will be there each and every month for you.
Yes,
so we will be here.
Yes,
through the summer.
Yeah, advance your Masonic knowledge through the summer. But something, James, that you always talk to me about is the Find My Lodge app.
Yes.
And it's really fantastic. Just playing around with it. It's just, you could always find a meeting, close to wherever you are. And if you're traveling around the UK, just look for one as well. That was a really good shout. I really enjoyed that app. Thanks, James.
Yeah, that's right. The Find My Lodge app is not, it's not, as far as I know, well, I know it's not a Provincial app.
Yeah.
It's an app that somebody had put together long ago, which still works, and it allows you to set which province you're in and choose between craft and chapter, and you can find meetings on any date. So if you decide that you're free a week next Tuesday and you want to see who's meeting, you can search for that date, and it will show you all of the meetings for that are going on that day. And in fact, if I don't know who started the Find My Lodge app, but if you happen to be listening to this podcast, get in touch with us and let us know, because we'd love to have you on.
Yes.
Talk about the challenges of bringing all that information together.
Yes, I would like to find out the architecture that goes behind it, because it's always updated. It's incredible. And then what I like about it is kind of like your virtual passport. And I love now that I can remember if I've gone to a lodge or not. It's so important, because after visiting you, everything blends in together sometimes, and it's just a good keepsake.
It is. And I wonder if in time the new portal website will start to consume some of that functionality. But that remains to be seen. So
yes,
I guess for now, Roddy, until the next month, we've been happy to meet.
Sorry to part.
Happy to meet again.
Thank you, guys.
See ya.